Now, usually I don't like to put people in boxes, but screw it, today I will. I will divide you guys into two groups. One group of smart people and one group of dumb people. And in order to do so, I have two questions. And those of you who answer them right will be in the smart group. And those of you who don't, well, you get the picture. So, first one is a math problem, or at least it's a sum. And I will say the numbers, and all you have to do is count up the numbers out loud together. All right? Here we go. No. 1,000 plus 40 plus 1,000 plus 30 plus 1,000 plus 20 plus 1,000 plus 10. And it went so well, guys. What happened? So 4,090 plus 10 is 4,100, not 5,000. Well, I have another question, and this time it's kind of a history question. And according to the Bible, how many animals of each kind did Moses bring on its ark? Is that 0, 1, or 2? You can show me with your hands. I see many hands, and I hear somebody here close to me saying 0, because Moses didn't bring anybody on an ark. It was Noah. So, we make assumptions quite easily, don't we? And who's on the smart team, by the way, still? Okay. Well, obviously this is not a relevant question. I started asking a different question. And that happened when somebody told me, Rico, it's not about how smart you are, but rather about how are you smart. And that made perfect sense to me, because I thought, yeah, now it's about perspective. Because we can both look at the same thing and yet see something different. And we can be right about something and yet have different opinions. And that's not about how smart we are, but rather about the different points of views that we have. Now, we live in a world where knowledge is very important, right? The more you have, the more authority you get, the more status you get, and the more salary. But it can also be our enemy at times. Now, research has shown that with education, we become more creative up to a certain point where more knowledge actually diminishes our creativity. And this is the point where we become experts, where we see tunnel vision and where it becomes a lot more difficult to see alternative perspectives. And knowing is basically a threat to creative thinking. Because if we know what's right, we often think that we also know what's wrong. And that's tricky. That's the tricky part. And at this point, we should stop becoming smarter and start questioning our beliefs. Because if there's one thing that we all have in common, it's that we have our blind spots, right? Because we simply can't see the things we can't see. And at this point, I'm thinking about these moments where, for example, I'm searching the entire house for the keys that I have in my pocket. Or maybe you've had it as well, when you're searching for your sunglasses that you put on your forehead. Or what about this one, when you're looking for your phone while you're on the phone? Anyone had that before? Yeah? Feels stupid, right? I had somebody in the audience saying, Rico, I was looking for my phone with the flashlight of my phone. Well, enough about that. And it feels stupid, but it has nothing to do with stupidity. It has everything to do with the way our brain works. Because our brain makes connections all the time. And if we do something over and over, our brain makes these connections stronger. Or actually, the electrochemical resistance of these connections will decrease. And that means that it becomes easier to do or think the same things all the time. So our brain is like an autopilot, and we make about 30,000 unconscious decisions each day. So our brain is way quicker than we can actively think. And the question is, well, what can we do about it? And the answer is simple. We need to question our beliefs. Because when we know what's right, we often think that we also know what's wrong. We need to question our beliefs. And therefore, I think that it can be very good to imagine a bad idea every now and then. And it can be very smart to ask a stupid question. And ask why or why not. And what I'm about to say might sound stupid, beware, but I think that we can become more creative by thinking in restrictions instead of possibilities, instead of opportunities. And I will illustrate that. I have another question, and this time you can answer anything that you want. Anything is right, except for Amsterdam. And you can keep the answer in your mind. You don't have to shout it out loud. And the question is, what's the capital city of the Netherlands? Keep it in your mind. And I would love to see the hands of those of you thinking of another city, place in the world, a village, maybe Den Helder, maybe The Hague, another place in the world. Who is thinking of another place in the world right now? Okay, that's, I think, well, maybe about half of you. And also, please show me the hands of those who are thinking of a description, an association, or a synonym of Amsterdam. So maybe 020, Ajax, or Mokum, something like that. Okay, wow, that's a lot of people. So, this is what I find so special. Because I just gave you all the space in the world. You could have said apple pie, you could have said Pamela Anderson, you had all the space in the world, and still, we all have the tendency to give an answer that's logical, that's realistic, and that's right. But what might be even more interesting is if I take away the most correct answer, which was obviously Amsterdam, it creates space for other answers that could also be true. And now, I know we don't like to be restricted in our freedom, but maybe, just maybe, it's the freedom that really restricts us, and it's the restrictions that free us from it. And I promise I won't get more poetic than this. But let me give you guys an example. Because since the crisis, for example, we can now have a coffee through a QR code and have it within 2 minutes at our table. We can all work from home and have video calls for things that we used to be in traffic jams for. So you could wonder, what is the bad idea? We used to think some of them were bad ideas as well. And we assume, for example, that a vacancy is a piece of paper with a job description on it, written by the employer. But what if we had a creative vacancy without text? Or that's not on paper? Or without a job description? Or maybe one that's written by the applicant instead of the employer? We need to question our beliefs. We believe that school education is a system, a schedule, provided by teachers in classes in school buildings, right? But what if we found a new way of education? What if we rebuilt education without classrooms? Or we think of education without a school building, without a teacher? And these are the types of questions that actually force us to be creative, to become creative. And you don't necessarily have to do it literally, but just by asking these questions, you might find some bad ideas and unconventional ideas, but if you take them seriously, they may hold very meaningful opportunities. Now, speaking of bad ideas, my girlfriend had a very bad idea in 2020. She wanted to travel 1,000 kilometers through Sri Lanka in our own tuk-tuk. Well, I don't know if you have ever been in Sri Lanka, but if you have, you know that that's a bad idea. I didn't, until I arrived in Colombo. And my girlfriend said, yeah, it's going to be fun, and you have to live every day like it's our last. And I said, yeah, well, today probably is. Because I was shocked. I was shocked of all the honking and shouting in the streets. I didn't know that so many vehicles could drive next to each other in a single lane road. I saw overtaking maneuvers that are in theory impossible. And, well, to be honest, I found out a little bit late that they drive on the other side of the road. So, well, after we bought our driver's license, we had our first driver's lesson. which some of you seem to find normal. Well, but in Sri Lanka, they have rules, right? They have rules and regulations about what you can and cannot do in traffic, just like here. Only these rules are not always being practiced. No. Instead, they look at them as an advice. Like, yeah, we could do that. And every Western tourist I spoke with called the traffic over there crazy, absurd, or suicidal. And from a Western perspective, that is absolutely logical, because we learn to see everything around us. We learn to look in our inside mirror, outside mirror, over our shoulder, then signal, inside mirror again, outside mirror, over our shoulder, and then turn the freaking steering wheel. We learn to see everything, and in Sri Lanka this is different. In Sri Lanka you don't make sure that you see everybody, you make sure that everybody sees you. And that's why everybody is honking and shouting and making so much noise. And it's crazy, but the space that you take will be given, and the space that you give will be taken. But without anybody looking at you funny. It's the most social system that I have ever experienced. It's like a large-scale capoeira, a holacracy on the road. And when I thought, well, how are they going to get past that? They already passed. So the creativity level is very high. Now, if I compare this to the Netherlands, we love rules, right? And we are very good at organizing. And I'm not saying that organizing is a bad thing, not at all. But if we organize, that means that we standardize, automate, and we limit variation. And when we limit variation, that means we limit creativity. And I learned a couple things in Sri Lanka. I think that we can be the most creative if we don't only standardize and automate, but also improvise and experiment. I think that we can be the most creative if we don't have just fixed solutions, but when we have room for new solutions. And when we look at people as professionals who don't have to do good, but who will probably do great, but still have the room to make a mistake. And I'm not telling this story as an argument to which type of traffic is better, not at all. It's not about what is right or wrong, but it's about what we can learn from something that at first glance seems absurd or idiotic. And that to me is the power of a bad idea. That to me is the essence of the power of a bad idea. And now you don't have to live every day like it's your last. You don't. But how beautiful would it be if we would just a little bit more often live our life like it's our first? Thank you.